Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart, and regular viewers or long-term viewers of the channel will know I've covered quite a bit of American Civil War wargaming on the channel. Most of it related to Warlord Games' Epic Battles release. I've done lots and lots of painting tutorials for that and some recent reviews and things as well. But I've been very lucky that Osprey Games and Arthur van der Ster have sent me this. This is a copy of With Hot Lead and Cold Steel, which is an up-and-coming release. I think it's out on October the 26th. As I record this, it's the 26th of September, so we've got a month to go. But they sent me a quick copy to have a look through and do a bit of review, and that's what this video is about. With Hot Lead and Cold Steel is written by Arthur van der Ster, published by Osprey Publishing, recommended retail price of $14.99. According to the back, is 80 pages long and full colour. Now, to be clear up front, I haven't played the game. I haven't had a chance to, nor will I in the foreseeable future, at least for the next few weeks anyway. But I have read the book cover to cover, and I wanted to give a bit of an overview of the rules. For those of you who are interested, it might be looking at picking the game up. This should give you a bit of a basic rundown of how the rules might work, and you can work out whether it's the type of game that would suit you. The game is largely scale agnostic, but it's clearly written for 28mm miniatures, but there are some conversion charts and some examples of suggested basing, but again, that's all very much open to do as you wish. The game appears to be pitched in that middle ground between simplicity and complexity, and looking at the overview from the author himself, I think that's what Arthur was aiming at with this set of rules. He's noted that it was important for him to use some of the correct terminology from the period, so when you complete actions like moving quickly, you will be moving in quick time, and when you want to attack the flank, you're moving by the flank, so you're using language at the time, which I think not only makes it clear what you're doing in the game, but also adds a fun bit of historical realism to a war game, if such a thing can really exist. The book is very, very nicely laid out, and the rules seem to flow very logically from one stage to another. There's no pre-measuring in the game, and there's fun rules for fog of war and reserves. Movement is dealt with in inches, though there are some recommendations of maybe using centimetres for smaller scales if you didn't want to halve the recommended distances. The stat line itself is super simple to understand. Movement is on there. Your shoot and melee work the same way, showing you the number of dice you'd need to roll, which are d10s in this game, and the score that's required. The game is split into 6 phases: a rally, artillery, order, movement, shooting and melee. But before that, at each game round, you determine the number of aides de camp that are available, and these can be used for issuing orders and for boosting other rolls. And then after that, you determine initiative to see who goes first in that given turn. And this does mean that someone could get a double turn, which is something you don't often see in historical games. I quite like the modern game design coming into more historical gaming. It's also notable that the artillery phase is there before the order phase, and this is there to represent big artillery barrages happening before you then move on and attack afterwards. If you don't fire your artillery in the artillery phase, you can fire them in the shooting phase later on. And artillery also covers a wide range of different artillery and shell types. So you've got your canister, you've got your smoothbore shot, rifled, mortars and things. So there's quite a lot of emphasis on making artillery realistic and work in the way they did in the period. Issuing orders is another important part of the game, and you're able to generate or make your own brigade commanders from the rules that are in the book. In the advanced rules, there are also ways for creating army commanders, corps commanders for larger games. Brigade commanders issue out their orders for you on your command as the general yourself, and they may be maneuvers, they may be to shoot, and there's a handy table that gives you the score that you'd need on the D10 in order to pass them. And then the ADCs come into effect because they can be used to add a +1 to those rolls. So if you've had a really useful roll at the beginning and you've got lots of ADCs, it will mean that you're more efficient in issuing orders in that turn. And as a fun element, if you do roll a 1 when issuing an order, you have to roll on the unexpected event table.
Movement is not overcomplicated, though there is some good structure around formation and manoeuvre. Shooting is also very straightforward based on the stat line you've already seen, and then there are modifiers to those shooting scores required based on the type of shooting you're doing and the situation in the game. Rules like damage on a natural 10 represent the brutal, close combat firing that often occurred in the battle. The returning fire rule is also quite unique, allowing fired upon units to return fire in that turn rather than in their own turn, and this in some way balances out the effects of a player winning initiative for 2 or maybe 3 turns in a row. The game does have figure stroke stand removal based on when you lose 6 points of damage, but I suppose a lot of that will depend on what scale and what basing structure you use for your miniatures. But the way the game is designed, you do slowly reduce the number of stands for your units. Now the size of your units are controlled by the number of stands. Much like other games, you have tiny, small, average and large regiments, and as they are reduced in the game, the stat lines are adjusted with them. Mechanically, melee works much the same way as shooting does, but there of course are different modifiers and reactions before the charge is made, such as fleeing or shooting or countercharging. Morale tests are made for multiple reasons, again covered in a handy list with another table of modifiers. Fleeing troops have the ability to rally at the beginning of the turn, with your commander having an effect just as when issuing orders. The cavalry rules are also pretty straightforward and work much the same way as infantry, with some differences derived via special rules and bonuses. The advanced rules allow for creating army commanders, as I mentioned earlier, and they also cover rules for core level games. In addition, there are special rules for different troop types and actions, think sharpshooters and digging in and fortifications and things like that. And then there are army stats with all the special rules covered. And then towards the end of the book, there's scenarios and some order of battles for those scenarios as well. As a bit of an overview, I think the rules were really nicely written, very straightforward, not overcomplicated at all. I'm not a huge rules person. I'm much more of a painter of toy soldiers. So sometimes reading rules I find a little bit dry, and I much prefer to learn a game by playing it on the tabletop. Saying all of that, these rules were very, very straightforward. Having read them through once, I feel like I've got a pretty decent grasp of how the game works. It all feels very familiar. I like the simple way the orders are issued and buffed by the ADCs. I find that really fun and easy to do. It feels like you've got that order mechanic in the game without making it cumbersome and overcomplicated. I quite like the idea of the artillery rule, that they get their own phase at the beginning of a turn as well. It'd be really interesting to see how that plays out and how powerful that is. A few thoughts on scale of miniatures and basing. Yes, they're mentioned inside, but it's also very clearly mentioned you can do whatever you like, and I see nothing in the rules that would restrict you using any basing structure really, as long as you have a way of tracking the number of casualties taken per stand and what a stand reflects in the game. It makes no odds at all in terms of epic battles, and I know a lot of you here will be collecting epic battles armies. Just like I am, you could very easily use one stand on one of those as a base for one of these. So one stand for tiny, 2 and 3 and 4 and so on, much like the way the Black Panda rules work themselves. It's quite easy to record each stand's worth of 6 casualties before you remove it, something you wouldn't always do in Black Powder, and I quite like that. I do like a bit of slow figure removal in a game, and it seems to work quite easily here. So really can use any set of miniatures you like. So all in all, I like these. They're simple, they're non-expensive, they're easy to read, and I will definitely be giving them a go and looking forward to do so in the future. Thank you very much again to Osprey Games for sending this over. Thanks very much, Benji, and for Arthur in the first place for reaching out to me, and we've had a few chats now, and for organising for the rules to come my way. Hopefully, as viewers, you found this useful and interesting. Maybe it's piqued your interest in trying these out. But either way, hopefully you found it useful one way or another. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.